Cycling is very, very safe. You don't need a helmet. What makes cycling dangerous is the cars.
Cycling is the best choice to move around the city. It reduces traffic. It's extremely healthy. It improves air quality for others. It's also incredibly accessible to a number of people.
I've never felt safe cycling on these streets.
If you live in a city that has a well-designed cycling network, it offers a new choice to speed through otherwise clogged up traffic, to get to your event faster.
To me, cycling represents one of the better modes of transportation. It's muscle-powered transportation with very little investment required to be a cyclist. Reno has been built under the assumption that we are a car-centric culture, and that has driven many development decisions over the decades. I have seen an improvement with cycling infrastructure. I have not seen an improvement with the culture. There are still people in this town who think it's okay to run cyclists over just because they exist.
I am the board president of the Truckee Meadows Bicycle Alliance. I work at a university where I also do some research that relates to transportation and transportation safety and sustainability. And I fell in love with biking because I grew up in a biking town, and I biked to school, I biked to work pretty much my whole life with just a few gaps, and I just feel it makes me a happier person. The Truckee Meadows Bicycle Alliance is a nonprofit here that is all about making Reno and Sparks area safer and a more fun and more accessible place to ride your bike. So we work on the safety issues that I talked about, trying to make sure that infrastructure is safe, teaching people how to ride safely. We're always trying to stay plugged into whenever there's a fatality. In northern Nevada, we have actually had an increase in pedestrian and bicycle fatalities recently. We have these great places to ride, but it's really hard to get through downtown without coming across this gap where you feel like you're kind of on your own, where you feel uncomfortable and maybe even unsafe.
People complain about cyclists or scooter riders all the time, but they've got nowhere to go. They can't go on the sidewalk in downtown. They can't be in the street because it's the traffic's way too fast. And they're getting hurt all the time because we haven't been developing things correctly. My least favorite part of the bike infrastructure in Reno is the broken network. And a really good example of that is the bike path on 4th Street on the way to the bus station stops a block before the bus station. The League of American Bicyclists recognized this, that successful cities, and a metric for successful cities is having that bike network connected to mass transit.
You're forced to take over the lane, which is perfectly legal to do in Nevada as a cyclist, and in order to be safe, a safe distance from automobiles that are parked, you really need to be about 3 feet away. Cycling infrastructure that is safe to me would be infrastructure that completely segregates cycling from automobile traffic and even pedestrian traffic. If you really think about it from the standpoint of what's most safe, to have a car-focused or car-centered culture for an entire city is really stupid in a lot of different ways. It's not good for the environment, the amount of CO2 getting put into the air. We are one of the fastest warming cities in the country. You're creating all this blacktop everywhere you go. You put in a new subdivision, you got to build roads. And on top of that, just anytime you have oil piling up on a roadway, that ends up, guess where? In the Truckee River, and water is life.
In 2014, RTC announced plans to redevelop parts of Virginia Street. Of the 3 final plans proposed, one would have introduced separated bike lanes throughout the Midtown corridor. RTC held several public meetings about the renovations, and many people came out and voiced their opinions. Business owners just wanted more parking, while residents wanted walkable sidewalks. Cyclists wanted safe cycling infrastructure.
When Midtown was being redeveloped, there was intense conflict between the cycling, the business, and the developers of that project. And you just couldn't fit all of that and a bike lane in the same space.
A city that is going to be amenable to pedestrian and cycling traffic really needs to weigh the pros and cons of that.
Cyclists just kind of gave up and they said, you know what, a bike lane over on Center Street that goes up to the university, then we're good. And the city agreed with that, and they thought it was great.
Which led to the Center Street project, which proposed a physically separated 2-way cycle path connecting Midtown to the university.
I've been at RTC for about 5 years, so I'm one of the project managers here. I have a traffic specialty working on roads and streets, traffic signals, roundabouts, and bicycle infrastructure. The Center Street Cycle Track project was one of our first bicycle-only focused projects. That project proposed a two-way cycle track on Center Street, which is now partially University Way, all the way from Midtown up connecting to the university. And I think that's a really critical linkage in our region because a lot of university students are biking.
Probably in 2021 or 2022, that the powers that be had decided that Center Street, despite their own consultants' report saying that that was the best alternative for that cycle track, was no longer on the table, and there was a lot of consternation about that. I will say there was never, to my recollection, any really good reason for why it died other than what I was able to document through public records and interviews with people. And what I discovered in public records requests was that government narratives completely shifted, especially as the row casinos started asserting input into that process. It was very clear that the row casinos wanted a cycle track on Virginia Street and not Center Street.
Once the project got into early design, it started running into questions and concerns about safety. Center Street is carrying a lot of freeway-bound traffic. I think we're all very lucky that the advocacy community kept the pressure on saying, hey, we need improvements. Let's not stop, and not do anything. It was a great catalyst for our city to ask more questions about what we want from bicycle infrastructure, and it eventually led into RTC and the city of Reno doing a pilot project downtown on Virginia and 5th Street.
The city announced they were going to put in place a pilot project that was going to have separated bike infrastructure or protected bike infrastructure, basically make spaces that were more comfortable for that kind of all access corridor through this otherwise pretty busy and kind of hostile place to ride your bike.
The pilot program was amazing and fun. I mean, the city was trying to do something different. I would say that it worked because every time I came downtown, I saw people with strollers, I saw people running, I saw lots of people cycling on it. Of course, drivers had some issues with it, and there were some business owners that were not particularly happy, but overall, the vast majority of people really enjoyed it.
It was never designed to be permanent. It was designed to test a variety of things. There was survey research associated with that, and we found that some people loved some of the features, some people loved some of the other features less. So they used that information to improve it for what we'll eventually be talking about as the biggest little bike network.
It happened in 2022. The city of Reno and RTC partnered in it, so at a very low cost. We tested a number of things, the separated bikeway configurations, as well as several intersection treatments like bicycle signals, bike boxes, which are basically a staging area at a traffic signal for cyclists to queue and then turn ahead of traffic, so it improves their visibility. We also tested protected intersections, which are something particularly exciting for me as an engineer. It's just because they solve a lot of tricky problems that I think a lot of cyclists faced at a traditional intersection. The most important being visibility on the right-hand side of vehicles.
We know that that was really successful in some cases, doubling ridership of bicyclists from counts, from LiDAR counts that were set up in a systematic way to count people. And it also seems to have reduced the near misses that you had between bicyclists, scooters, and motorists. So even though it caused some headaches, surprised some people, and some of the features took a little more explaining than others, it was, I would say, a pretty successful project.
On 5th Street, I think it's really interesting. We expected the bike lanes to make things safer for bicyclists and pedestrians. That's what they're designed to do, is to reduce conflicts, slow people down in vehicles. But the greatest conflict reduction was actually between vehicles, vehicle to vehicle conflicts. But I think the most important thing is that it really introduced to the community, to the local staff, there are different ways that we can configure our streets.
It turns out that just low traffic neighborhood streets are great for riding your bike on, and you don't always need bike paths when you have those. There's many parts of the city where you can go all kinds of different places to visit friends, to maybe go to businesses, to go to schools, and you have low rates of traffic, and the cars are going at a speed that isn't that different from what you're traveling at.
Bicycle infrastructure is really advancing nationwide. There's a lot of appetite in our region, both from the public and our public officials, to get more people on bikes. I do not think we would be where we are today with the level of investment we're doing on Biggest Little Bike Network and other projects without the exposure of that project.